All right, welcome back to Life It with DVD. Thanks for being here. Today, I wanted to talk about the root of all procrastination and why you were forced to delay. So, you know that feeling, right? The deadline looms, the anxiety is building, and yet you find yourself doing anything but the task you set out for yourself, right? We're told that the solution is, better planners, more efficient planners, more discipline, finding that motivation or inspiration to start. But what is the real reason that we're procrastinating? Often it has nothing to do with time management and everything to do with our subconscious trying to protect you from a threat that you learned as a child. So this is a powerful reframe to think about it as differently like this. So procrastination is protection, not laziness. Right? This is really important to shift your perspective from the laziness. Oh, that he just doesn't want to do it. He just doesn't have the drive, doesn't have the motivation. Right? It's nothing to do with that. It's not the laziness. Procrastination is the mind's priority of immediate emotional safety over long-term achievement. So there are four different types of fears that can shield you from this. So one is the fear of failure. So if I don't try, I can never truly fail. Procrastination provides that alibi for your self-worth. Two, the fear of success, or simply increased expectations or responsibilities. So what new pressures and responsibilities will this success bring? And that feeling of overwhelm that can come from that. I discussed overwhelm in one of my last videos, so feel free to check that out if you want. Three is the fear of judgment or the imposter syndrome. This actually ties into my last video as well, but this is often putting your work out there can make yourself feel like you're a target for criticism. So hiding is safer. And then four, the loss of autonomy, which is the deep root here. This is your core. It's a silent rebellion against feeling controlled. So, right, the childhood training. Why were you forced to procrastinate? The concept of forced procrastination is how children in controlled environments learn to delay as their only form of control. So often, when we grow up, when we procrastinate, this is the only way that we can kind of protect ourselves from something that feels uncomfortable or off, that we don't want to do. And there's a variety of reasons for this, and I'll get into it. So, a scenario is a child is forced to practice an instrument for hours by, maybe a demanding or a critical parent. And the real task isn't the music for them. It's surviving that control and that criticism, which can really affect their sense of self. So the child learns that delaying and doing the bare minimum, or doing it at the last second, is the only way to reclaim a sliver of control and autonomy in this situation. So the work becomes paired with feelings of oppression, not accomplishment. So that's one way to look at it. This is also about conditional love and performance. If love or approval was tied to achievement, right? I'm proud of you because you got an A or whatever. Every task becomes a potential threat to your fundamental sense of self if you did less than that, right? Because then that feels, of course, that you're not loved. So procrastination avoids that high stakes game where you could be subjected to additional failure, criticism, all the things I had mentioned above. So why the standard advice fails miserably with procrastination? So, right, I mean, a lot of people are just like, you just got to do it, you just got to work yourself up, um, you know, and just like put yourself into motion, generate that momentum. But, when you just tell someone to just do it or power through, right, keep your head down and power through, right? This is like telling someone with a broken leg to run a marathon. It ignores the injury and causes more damage through the increased internal shame and conflict that it starts to spiral with. So, for example, right? Um, if you have, something that have to do, an assignment or whatever, and you are struggling to do it because, for whatever reason, let's just say you are worried that you're not going to do that well on it. It's maybe not that interesting to you. And, tackling it, head on is, well, it's a little bit uncomfortable. Like, it's just, you just don't want to get into it. You just would prefer if it went away, but it's not going away. So, what can start to happen is you procrastinate it, and then, oh no, you only have a week left. You only have 3 days left. You only have a night left. And every time that you are reminded that you have this thing, you start to beat yourself up because it's like, why haven't I done this? Why haven't I gotten this assignment done? And in that cycle of guilt, of guilting yourself or being critical on yourself, you then start to develop an identity around it. And this is this guilt and shame sort of spiral that really is very detrimental to everybody that does this sort of self-criticism. And you start to develop an identity around, well, this is just who I am. I'm just lazy. I'm just not going to do these things when I'm supposed to. And especially if other people have kind of told you that, or criticized you or berated you for that, then you might absorb that as your identity. So if you then have a shame-based identity around doing certain things, right? Procrastination is the natural response to try to take back autonomy of the external world here. So going back to my example, right? These are brilliant. So time management tools, right? Planners, apps, little games that try to motivate you. Kanban boards. They're great at managing the symptom, which is disorganization, overwhelming things. But ultimately, they're useless against the cause, which is your own emotional resistance to these things and what you're really avoiding here. So your nervous system will always try to find a way to sabotage a plan it perceives as threatening or something that could threaten your self-worth or your identity, but also just how you feel in general. You're going to move towards distraction or anything but the thing that you're trying to avoid, because you're trying to avoid some sort of deeper feeling. So self-punishment and shame, right? Berating yourself only confirms the underlying belief that you're not good enough, right? You're inadequate. All of those limiting beliefs. And making the perceived threat seem even larger and strengthening the need for that protective behavior of going to the distractions, of the procrastination. And it just really can start to be this devastating cycle on your psyche, not just your behavior, but every part of your being. So I'll get into this a bit further in a second video, but for now I'm going to wrap this up. So in conclusion, the first step to healing from this is to stop fighting yourself, right? The next time you procrastinate, get curious, not critical, right? What is my mind trying to protect me from right now, right? Is there something about this that reminds me of when I was a child, or some sort of feeling or threat from the outside, maybe from an authority figure, maybe something you just feel very uncomfortable with, right? So you have to go introspective, get in touch with yourself. So in this next video, we'll break down the specific types of procrastinators and the exact strategies to heal each pattern at its root. So this is not the end of the war with yourself. This is really kind of the beginning, but as always, it's about becoming more aware of why you're doing the things that you're doing and hijacking that thought process, that subconscious thought process that many of us we don't even realize that we do, and slowing down and getting to the root of, well, why am I doing this, right? So did you experience childhood where you felt controlled or criticized and that you had to perform for love or for value or appreciation, right? Let me know in the comments if you're open to that. Let me know, what is your common form of procrastination? What does this look like for you? And can you resonate with this idea? So like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll be back shortly for part 2. So thanks for watching. See ya.